Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Jonah Lupton. Once again, I have another great interview for you today. I am pleased to be joined by Rajiv Shukla. He is the chairman behind the Alpha Healthcare SPAC, and they are merging with Humacyte, which is a company that is bioengineering human tissue, which sounds kind of crazy, but it's pretty exciting at the same time. I don't know a lot about this industry or this particular company. I've done some I've done some due diligence, but I still have a lot to learn. So I'm pretty geared up for this one. And then we have Dale Sander as well. He is the CFO of Humacyte. So, and then Laura Niklason, who is the founder and CEO of Humacyte, now running the company. So welcome everyone. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having us on, Jonah.
Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. So let's start with Rajiv, right? Since you're taking this company public through your SPAC. So why don't you talk to us about your investment thesis and what drew you to Humacyte over the other great companies that are out there?
Absolutely, Jonah. Thanks for having us on. Really wonderful to speak with you and your viewers. My own background has been heavily focused on healthcare. Having served as the head of global M&A for Pfizer's biggest division, the R&D division, I've had a lot of experience looking at great R&D companies. And during my time there, I was involved with about $65 billion worth of acquisitions, so a fair amount of experience, followed by private equity and hedge fund experience. When we set out to do Alpha Healthcare, we'd set a very high bar for ourselves because our previous transaction, DermTech, is currently the best trading healthcare deal in the market, and is only behind DraftKings.
So I'm a huge DermTech fan. So you guys hit a home run with that one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think DermTech has a long way to go in terms of shareholder value creation. The company is just getting started. John Dobak and team have done a terrific job so far, but they've got a lot of fuel in the tank and they're going to go a long way. So we had a fairly high bar to clear, and we looked at 95 transactions to hone in on Humacyte. And what we found very interesting about the company, the first thing that we liked about the company, of course, has to be the management team. And I've tended to like entrepreneur CEO companies, and Laura being the founding scientist and the entrepreneur running the company as CEO is definitely a very attractive proposition, because in the early stages of any company, it's the founder's passion and vision that drives the company forward, and then over time, professionals and others can come in. But for the first, say, 5-10 years of the company's life, it's really the founder who drives things forward. So having Laura there and her energy and passion for the company is, very palpable on a daily basis. So that was very important for us. But, just looking at the company from a very objective lens, we tend to like deals which are focused on very large problems that are addressing a large unmet market need, as opposed to something that's tweaking or refining an existing product. And the fact that Humacyte is focused on a market that has 160 billion in revenue per year, that's 160 billion in revenue per year, was very attractive for us. The fact that it's a platform company, it's not a one-off product or a one-off innovation, again, was very attractive for us. And then we tend to like companies that are de-risked to some extent. And when I was running my hedge fund, for example, we had very tight risk controls on our investments. And we like these asymmetric risk reward stories. So the fact that Humacyte has 800 plus years of patient data, they're so well past clinical proof of concept. And if you look at all the biotech companies, I should take 1 second aside to talk about how value gets created for biotech companies, right? If you're a commercial company, it's very easy. Value gets created as you create revenue and then earnings and then ideally cash flow, in that progression. But for a biotech company, given that any innovation that's done by a worthwhile biotech company could be hugely valuable, value gets accreted as the company goes through different phases, different clinical milestones. And broadly, us healthcare types, we're used to valuing discovery stage companies around 300 million, assuming all other boxes are checked, but about 300 million for a discovery stage company, and a little bit higher for preclinical. And then as it starts to go into clinical stages, the valuation gets at the $500 million mark and above. So with Humacyte, we've got a company that has 3 phase 3 trials in progress, which is very substantial. If you look at most of the other biotech companies that are public, even biotech companies that have gone through a SPAC transaction, they're either phase 1 or earlier. There are a few that are latest stage, but most of them are phase 1 and earlier. So there's significant clinical risk there, which I believe Humacyte has addressed with their data. We like the fact that the company is a pioneer, and a lot of people use the word pioneer very lightly, but when the US government grants you that designation, that's when you know it's really serious. And Humacyte was the first company in the world to get an RMAT designation, which stands for Regenerative Medicine Advanced Therapy. Very, very critical. What that does is it fast tracks the company through the review process with the FDA, which is very useful. The fact that the company has a very significant patent portfolio, which again creates a moat around the company. You can't have copycat imitators and so on. The company has 91 patents issued.
Just so people know, I mean, this company was started 16 years ago, right, in 2004. So it's been around for a while, a lot of R&D, raised a lot of money that went into R&D. So this is not a company that was just started, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. We're seeing a lot of SPAC transactions where companies that were funded last year or even as soon as this year have been SPAC'd. This company is very substantial. It's been around for a while. It's got tremendous roots. Laura has been a professor at Yale. She's done her postdoc at MIT, her residency at Harvard Medical, very serious academic credentials. And company raised $500 million in the private markets. It's a very, very significant private company, more along the lines of, I don't use these comparisons lightly, but more along the lines of SpaceX, which is trying to create a whole new market and has been private for a long time. Anyways, coming back to the IP, 91 patents issued. Great minds like Bob Langer involved. Bob is on the board of the company. Laura and Bob have a very close relationship, working together in the lab. And then 2 more things which really distinguish this company from a lot, which is, a lot of companies can create the science, but how do they take the product to market? And the first question is, can you make it? You've invented it, can you make it? And the company has gone through the effort of creating in-house manufacturing. They don't have to outsource the manufacturing, which again is a very expensive and difficult thing. They have in-house manufacturing, which can be scaled up to $1 billion in sales per annum. Very crucially, they've done clinical trials to test how the in-house manufactured products behave in a human being. So it's phase 2 trials have been done with the in-house manufacturing, which is a critical data point for the US FDA. They need to see that data before they can approve a product. So that's another step the company's taken. And then finally, for a lot of early stage, biotech companies that are playing in very large markets, commercialization is often a key issue. And there, Humacyte has partnered with Fresenius Medical Care. Fresenius is the biggest player in dialysis. Dialysis is what one needs to do when our kidneys can no longer filter blood, and then your body poisons itself over time. So in dialysis, the blood is actually pumped out of your body, purified, and then pumped back in, and you have to do that 3 times a week. So Fresenius is the market leader there, and they've partnered with Humacyte and put in $175 million into the company, and committed to making Humacyte's products the standard of care in their network, which is, I don't think people have appreciated the meaning of that. When a company says this will be the standard of care, it's like Apple saying this display is going to be the standard display that we use across our platform. That's right. What it means. So very significant de-risking on the clinical front. There is and Laura and Dale will get into this, but there are impending BLA, biologic license applications with the US FDA as soon as next year. But even before that, we'll have data. And, if you look at this, so just sort of fleshing out the investment thesis and finishing with valuation. So when we looked at this company, we had 2 questions. What's the right entry valuation and what's the right target valuation, right? And you, as a public investor, you have to have those 2 things clear. And then what are the triggers that take you from the entry valuation to the target valuation? The triggers I've just talked about, and Laura can talk further about this, but the entry valuation for us, we're seeing a lot of SPAC deals where the leap from the last round to the SPAC round is very substantial. There are some great deals that have been done, like Butterfly Network, for example, where the valuation was the same as the last private round. And that's a sign that you're dealing with a sophisticated counterparty, right? Jonathan Rothberg was the Butterfly founder. And when he was dealing with the SPAC team, smart enough quickly to realize how to structure this properly. So we had the absolutely wonderful experience of dealing with the Humacyte team, which I think, is so sophisticated, not just in science, but in transactional matters. And we said, look, the valuation should be set the same as your last private round, because that last private round was very substantial, $150 million round. So heavily validates that valuation, and there can be no question if that valuation is right or not, because it's so substantial. And you've done a whole lot of things since then. So instead of giving you like a 20% step up, which is traditional between rounds, what we'll do is we'll split that up into 2 jumps of around 10% each. We gave them 7.5 million shares on an 80 million base. So you get another 7.5 million shares at $15 and another 7.5 million at $20. So for investors, what they need to appreciate is Laura and her team are confident that the stock is going to go up 50% and then double. And they've put real money, their own money, to back that, right? That's very serious. A lot of people will talk about big upside, but not put their money where their mouth is. This team has done that. It's very real. Now, on the target valuation front, we've got some data in our pipe deck, the last few slides in the pipe deck. And I often get asked the question, which company is a comp for Humacyte? Who do you think Humacyte will look like when it grows up? It's a teenage, it's not a baby, it's a teenager. How will this teenager look like when it grows up? And the answer is, well, having been there, I was at Pfizer 15 years ago, so a lot of time has passed. But Humacyte reminds me really of Amgen as a company. And Gordon Binder from Amgen is actually joining the board. So it's going to be amazing to have him on. But
Yeah, so I just want to get the valuation. So the SPAC valuation.
We valued the company at 800 million, the same as the last round.
Yep.
My SPAC had 100 million in cash in the trust.
Right.
And then we raised 175 million. We'd set out to raise 100 million, but we had so much demand from really smart people like OrbiMed and UBS and Pura Vida. These are all very respected large healthcare investors that we had to upsize to 175. So it's 800 plus 275, about 1.1 billion is the post-money market cap.
Right, but then an enterprise value is really just about 800.
Enterprise value is, yeah, you just subtract the cash, so it's about 800 and change. So that's the entry valuation. Now on the exit valuation, it's not easy to do a straight up comp. You have to do an SOTP. You have to do a sum of parts valuation, and so then you have to look at, okay, who is the comparator on vascular trauma, on AV access, on PAD, on diabetes, so on and so forth, cabbage and so on. And the numbers start getting very large because this is a platform company with late stage clinical products and so on. So I'll give you one example. There's a company called Edwards Life Sciences. It's a listed company. It's worth $64 billion. The company went public in 20 years ago. And since then, in 20 years, the market cap has gone up 65x or so. Yeah. Which means like 3x pretty much every year.
Oh, there's a lot of healthcare, but I mean, I remember I got into the business back in 2002, and I remember back then Amgen and Genentech and these smaller companies that now are. I mean, Genentech got taken out, but yeah, I mean, Amgen is significantly bigger. Intuitive Surgical. Yeah. I mean, you go up. I mean, it's just a massive industry with companies that grow up to be $50, $100 billion companies all the time.
Exactly. Because a biotech company creates a product that has huge commercial potential and it's protected by the 16-year patent rights that the US government grants them. The value creation can be very vertical when the product is approved. The thing is, the market begins moving ahead of the approval because they're factoring in the data. So anyways, coming back to like an SOTP, so Edwards Life Sciences, for example, is a listed company and they make heart valves using cow tissue. So they literally have staff that, sits with the cow tissue and crafts these heart valves.
My mother had open heart surgery and she got one of those valves in her. I don't know if it was from that company specifically, but I wouldn't be surprised.
How's she doing?
Good, great.
Wonderful. I mean, this would have been a life-threatening situation in the past, but now people can live and survive. The issue with bovine tissue, of course, is that the body rejects it as a foreign invader, so the immune system will attack it, and so on. Humacyte can create organs with human tissue,
right?
And that human tissue has been decellularized, so it doesn't create an immune response. And again, Laura can talk about all the science here. But Edwards is worth 64 billion, and just as transcatheter aortic heart valves, it makes heart valves basically. Humacyte is also working on a cabbage product, which Laura can talk about. So that's the one application on the heart side. Shockwave Medical is a company that's focused on peripheral arterial disease, which is one of the clinical indications the company is working on late stage. Superb data we've got on that. Shockwave did about 50 million roughly of revenue last year, a little bit more than 50 million. They're worth about 4 billion market cap.
It's even more than that. I recently sold the stock because it's up about 100% year to date. I think market cap got up to about 6.5 billion.
Jesus, my God, it was 4 billion when we were doing the deal.
I think they'll do. They just raised guidance for the year, but they'll only do about 200 million revenue this year.
Wow, look at that ramp. Yeah. So that's an example again of unmet need meeting a product that can address their need. what Laura and team have done for peripheral arterial disease with their HAV is going to be transformational. You know, all of these stenting procedures, they're temporary. They don't address the issue forever. So Shockwave is now worth 6 billion plus. If Humacyte did nothing but just that alone, we would be a $60 stock. So the point is, you know, if you start doing the SOTP on all these different things, the value of this company looks to be very large, looks to be somewhere in the $200 range. However, in order to get there, the company needs to, you know, go through these different milestones, which Laura can talk you through. They need to get the approvals, but as they get those approvals, this thing is going to move in that manner. And it's simply based on data. It's not an assertion based on some hope. As the company achieves those milestones, and we've seen that in DermTech as well.
I was just going to say in DermTech, you know, as soon as they got NCCN, and then you get the insurance, and you know, it goes from a $10 stock.
And mind you, DermTech has other products in their pipeline besides the PLA
and carcinoma. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and the stock was up 14x over the deal value that we'd done in February. So anyway, that's the quick investment thesis. Not very quick, but as investment thesis. And we'll let Laura and Dale talk about the science and commercial matters.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Now, Laura, your turn. So talk to us about Humacyte. If someone doesn't have any idea what this company does and hasn't been to the website yet, how would you explain what Humacyte is?
So Humacyte is really a transformational company. We have figured out over the last number of years how to take human donor cells that we have in cryobanks right now, and how to grow those cells in our manufacturing suite so that we can create new human tissues, replacement human tissues. Right now, we're growing at commercial scale. We're growing replacement engineered arteries that are grown from human cells in the manufacturing suite using processes that we've developed over a number of years that are patented, but also proprietary.
Something called a bioreactor, right?
It's in a bioreactor, yeah. So we have a system where we take the cells and we put them into a bioreactor that coaxes the cells to grow into the shape and size of the tissue we want to grow. So it's a platform technology because we can grow tissues in different shapes and sizes. Right now, we grow blood vessels that are 40 centimeters long and 6 millimeters in diameter. But we can grow tissues bigger, fatter, shorter, smaller. We can grow tissues with different mechanical properties that we can build in and tune. But one of the key things that is really important about the technology, aside from the platform aspect, is the fact that for all the tissues that we grow, after we grow them, we then, as Rajiv mentioned, we decellularize them. And by washing the cells out of the tissue, that gives us a couple things. One, it allows these tissues to then be implanted into any human patient without rejection. So we've implanted more than 450 patients so far, and we've had 0 instances of clinical rejection. So that's really important. But just as important is the fact that because the cells are washed away, this tissue is non-living, and that means it has a shelf life. So right now our shelf life is 1.5 years. So we can grow batches of tissues, 200 at a time, and then QC them and then release them and ship them to hospitals. And they literally sit there on the shelf until a surgeon and a patient needs them. And you literally reach off the shelf, open up the package, cut open the bag, take the tissue out and sew it into the patient. And that's revolutionary. That's never been done before.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now, like I said earlier, this company was started in 2004. So you guys have over a decade of R&D. I know Rajiv said there's a very large patent portfolio. And in some of the presentations that I've watched, you know, you're doing blood vessels now, but you have bigger aspirations down the road with real human organs, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Are they grown the same way in these bioreactors?
Yes, all of our tissue and organ products, both in the clinic and preclinical, are all grown in our bioreactor process. So some of the keys of the process is that our bioreactor systems actually mimic the environment inside your body. So for example, for blood vessels, for all of your blood vessels in your body, every time your heart beats, all of your blood vessels stretch a little bit. And in fact, we mimic that in our bioreactor systems. So we have pumps in place that stretch the blood vessels as they're growing in a way that mimics the action of the human heart. So we have sort of industrialized or commercialized the ability to make human tissues in a way that, we call it biomimetic. We're mimicking the human body. And we do that for other tissues that we have in development right now. So for example, an example of a proto-organ that we're developing is to use our engineered human vessels and to combine them with islets from the pancreas. Islets are the collections of cells that sense blood sugar and secrete insulin in response. So we're combining islets with our blood vessels as a potential future treatment for patients with type 1 diabetes, as an example of sort of a line extension of what we're already doing.
Interesting. What types of surgical procedures would these human or these bioengineered tissues or vessels be used in? Is it where there's a blood clot or another blockage, or there's open heart surgeries? I mean, I'm sure there's a million different scenarios, but can you give us maybe 3 or 4 of the most common?
Sure. So right now we have phase 3 trials underway. We've been in man for 8.5 years. So our current phase 3 trials are using our vessels to treat patients with acute injury. So for example, patients who have vascular damage from a car accident or a gunshot wound. So we have a phase 3 trial underway there. And in fact, that trial is supported by the Defense Department because in 2018, the Department of Defense named Humacyte's vessels as one of their top 5 priorities for gaining FDA approval. The reason for that is that they see huge value in using our blood vessels to treat wounded warfighters who have severe injuries, for example, from blast injuries from IEDs in the Middle East. So we're one of their top 5 priorities. In addition, we have a phase 3 trials underway using our vessel to treat patients with kidney failure who need a connection between an artery and a vein so they can undergo hemodialysis. But as other examples, we have phase 2 trials underway using our vessels to help patients who have blockages in the arteries in their legs. Sometimes when that atherosclerosis or that blockage becomes so severe, patients can face amputation and limb loss. And so we've been using our vessels and treating patients who are at high risk of losing limbs because of the severity of their disease. And Humacyte's HAV provides a way to restore blood flow to these patients and helps them avoid amputation. But you're right. In addition, going forward, we see many other opportunities, including heart bypass surgery. To do a heart bypass, it actually means growing a somewhat smaller blood vessel than we're currently testing in the clinic. But those blood vessels we're growing currently at Humacyte, and in fact, we're testing them in non-human primates for heart bypass right now. And we expect to use the outcomes of these primate surgeries as a basis for an IND submission to the FDA and to get permission to go to a phase 1 trial.
So you said about 450 patients have received these implanted vessels. Is that being done at one medical center, or are you working with several medical centers?
We have a huge range of experience. So we've implanted these vessels at 60 medical centers. Wow. In 6 countries. And more than 100 surgeons have done these implantations. So one of the beauties of the tissues that we create is that they actually closely mimic native human blood vessels. They sew the same, they handle very similarly. So it's actually been a fairly easy process to introduce this in multiple clinical trials at multiple sites, because vascular surgeons are used to handling human blood vessels. It's what they do for a living. And our engineered tissues handle in very much the same way.
If you're working with the surgeon for the first time, do you have to send someone from Humacyte to be there and oversee it?
We have done that in many cases, but not all cases. Typically, when we do send somebody, it's more sort of an instructional thing, and we'll send them for the first case. And then after that, the surgeons are on their own. And that really is very different from a lot of sort of newfangled medical devices. So for example, yeah, so for like catheter delivered heart valves, for example, the company rep doesn't typically go out just for the first case. They'll often go out for 20 cases at a new site. And so rolling the technology out to new sites is a very labor intensive and very costly exercise.
I've had friends that worked at Stryker and these other companies, and they are in the hospitals all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and we will clearly have to have some hospital presence for sure. There are some specifics as far as how you open the packaging and cut into the bag, but the learning curve is very, very short compared to a lot of other types of technology.
Cool. Dale, when did you join the company? Oh, we got Dale on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Jonah, I joined as a board of director about 6 years ago. And then as the company started getting closer to commercialization and also closer to this transition to public status about a year ago, a subset of the board started working more closely with management to prepare for transition to public status. And that led to me joining in 2021 as CFO and transitioning off the board to join the company as full-time management.
Okay. What can you talk to us about on the financial side? I know a lot of people want to know when products like this can be commercialized and start generating revenues. I believe now, I guess, Laura, back to you. So FDA, so right now you guys are in phase 3 trials. There may or may not be an advisory panel, FDA advisory panel. When would you expect an FDA decision or approval?
Right. So we expect to file our biologics licensing application, or BLA, our first one, sometime late in 2022. And in that case, given the 6-month statutory response of the FDA for products that have the RMAT designation, which is kind of like a breakthrough status, we would expect to have FDA approval sometime in 2023.
Okay. Great.
But one thing, Jonah, to keep in mind, and this relates back to a point that Rajiv made earlier, is that, with 30 years of experience in the industry, what I've noticed is that, market response and value creation in the company can come far in advance of the approvals also. Clearly, these upcoming approvals make us very valuable as a company. But as Laura described, we've taken a very broad approach to developing this technology, and our private company shareholder group has been very supportive in ensuring that we weren't just working on one application or one medical use of this, but on a broad basis. So there's a great deal of news flow from a lot of these earlier stage clinical trials that have been conducted that will also be coming out in 2021 and 2022, even in advance of the approval, that I think very well supports the value of the company and the clinical results that have been generated already.
So I know you said that your current manufacturing facility, and where is that? Is that in Raleigh as well, Raleigh, North Carolina?
Yeah, that's in the Research Triangle Park area of Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay. It's kind of like becoming the healthcare, well, one of the healthcare big meccas, I suppose, of the U.S., right? Because you have, Duke Medical's down there, and Duke Medical was one of the first facilities, if not the first, that actually implanted one of your vessels, correct?
It was the first facility in the U.S. to implant one of our vessels. Yes, that was at Duke. You're right. There's been a huge influx, particularly in the last few years, of additional biotech companies just flooding into the area. I think there's there's a great potential employee base between Duke and UNC and Wake Forest, and just the number of tech and biotech companies in this area has been exploding. And the cost of doing business in this part of the country is very reasonable.
It's Boston and the Research Triangle, like 1 and 2, and then I'm not even sure what 3 would be. Maybe Southern California. There's a few out there as well.
Yeah.
What else can you talk to us about? What else can you tell us about the next couple of years for Humacyte? You know, while you guys are doing these trials and developing new products, before we get to actual revenues, and it sounds like those revenues could be coming in 2023.
Yeah, we anticipate first commercial revenue in 2023. But as Dale and Rajiv has said, you know, that there's going to be a pretty steady news flow because we have been so well capitalized with nearly $500 million of investment. We have these multiple ongoing clinical trials in 3 areas. And so with trials completing enrollment and then having readouts, there's just a lot of news flow that is going to continue to support how well the product functions. But in addition, we've got, as I mentioned earlier, we've got large animal preclinical studies in coronary artery bypass. We have a set of studies that we've wrapped up in juvenile primates, where we're using the vessel in a model of pediatric congenital heart surgery. So about 1 in 100 US babies is born with some sort of congenital heart defect, and some of those babies need surgery. One of the big issues with pediatric heart surgery is that if you use something like a piece of plastic, a plastic tube, to repair something, a hole in the heart, or create a new vessel, as the child grows, that plastic doesn't grow with the baby. And so many of these kids face repeated open heart operations every 3, 4, 5 years to take out the old piece of plastic and put in a new one because it doesn't grow. And obviously, you know, having 3 or 4 open heart operations by the time you're 20 is no picnic. So we're evaluating our products to see if, when we put them into juvenile animals, whether or not they actually grow with the recipient. Because if they did, that could be just transformational for pediatric surgery. In addition, we have large animal studies that we've done and that we're going to continue combining our blood vessels with pancreatic islets, and we're studying this in animal models of type 1 diabetes. So again, we think that this therapy, which would be administered to patients in an outpatient surgical procedure, could have the potential to reverse and cure type 1 diabetes in particular patients, particularly patients who, you know, there are 1.4 million type 1 diabetics in the US. Many of those manage to control their blood sugars, you know, fairly well, but some of those folks have terrible problems controlling their blood sugar, and they go on to suffer terrible complications, including blindness,
right,
kidney failure, loss of limbs. For patients who are facing those terrible complications, and there's a lot of them, having an implant like this where they could go and get an outpatient surgical procedure and cure their diabetes, that could be transformative.
When do we have any clarity on when this SPAC merger might be completed and we might see Humacyte trading under their own ticker symbol?
Yeah, I think the clarity around the timeline is you know, will emerge very quickly, but right now where we have guided people is late July, very early August is when we expect the shareholder vote to be undertaken and for the transaction to close. So it's actually coming up very quickly.
Okay, which is about 6 months from when the deal was announced, right?
That's ultimately that's
it'll be sooner than 6 months, Jonah.
Okay.
So we announced the deal on Feb 17th. We have until August end to close the deal as the outside date. We're just filing our response to the SEC, I think today, on their last round of comments. The SEC takes around 10 days to 14 days to go through the review. Although they can be faster, but that's usually where it's at. And then we give a 20-day notice to our investors. So today is the 30th, another 10, 14 days after that, and then 20 days add on that. Of course, if the SEC comes in with more comments, which can happen,
Yep.
then that may push us out another 10 days to 2 weeks. But given that they've sent us very light comments now, we're hoping this is the final round.
Okay. When this deal finally gets closed, are you guys going to New York to ring the bell?
Rajiv already rang the bell.
I rang the bell with my previous SPAC, but it'd be nice to, you know, if we don't have these COVID issues, to do that, because there's so many people who've helped make Humacyte a success, and for them to be there to enjoy that moment. And I've done that. It's a lot of fun. I actually did that on my 20th wedding anniversary, and the NASDAQ celebrated my anniversary at the exchange, which was 4 years ago. But I think it'd be nice to do that.
It's great for the
company
team.
is already adding a lot of great people in preparation for the future. So maybe Laura can talk about how she's planning on the commercial front, where we're deep in process of building that up. And there's a lot of great things happening, you know, and I've again seen John Dobak do this really well at DermTech. You know, as we were putting the deal together with him, he was working on putting a commercial team, a regulatory team together, and got in a new CFO who's very good. And we're seeing Laura do a lot of the same. She's got Dalen, very experienced hand as CFO, and she's building up the team. So perhaps Laura, you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so we are, because we're obviously planning for success, and you know, we've got a lot of shots on goal here and a lot of things all moving forward simultaneously. So we are building out the commercial team. Obviously, we have this commercial partnership with Fresenius, which is very strong, and which will help with commercializing our products in the US, but also will help tremendously with commercialization and distribution ex-US. But in addition to that, we're building up our own commercial team. We recently made an offer and had that offer accepted by an extremely experienced chief commercialization officer who has a lot of deep experience both in cardiovascular devices, but also in replacement human tissues. I don't want to share his name right now, but we're going to do a press release on that pretty soon, and he's going to join in August.
Awesome.
In addition, we've been building out the regulatory team as well.
So who is, I mean, I assume you have to hire, when you say the commercial team, are you talking mostly sales reps?
Right. So the sales reps would be hired out probably as the last piece of this, but at building up the commercial team, it really means building up a marketing strategy and also a reimbursement strategy, and developing the health economics cases so that we can show not just the great outcomes with the product, but also how using the product for many patient populations actually saves the whole system money. Because of avoidance of complications and infection. And so building out that health economic case that we can take to hospital value committees, value assessment committees, that's also part of the commercialization effort.
Right, because I've seen a lot of great products, but until you get the insurance companies on board, it's very hard to scale those products. So that's, you know, having that clinical data.
I want to add something very interesting here, which again, the market may not realize. So the Fresenius partnership, you know, not only brought capital into the equation as well as commercial support, but during the reimbursement discussions, it's very important to have real world data. And getting that real world data is very time consuming and expensive. So for example, with DermTech had a product when we were negotiating with them on the deal, they had a product that worked. And the clinical data was very strong. There was no question that this product is great, the PLA test. The question is, what's the reimbursement strategy? Right. And the company had spent a fair bit of effort putting that data together for the reimbursement plan, which again, thankfully, we diligenced during our process. We saw the draft approval, so we were not taking any real risk there either. And mind you, we shared all this publicly with investors that we have a draft approval and so on. And still people didn't see the value until the stock shot up 4x, 5x. In the case of Humacyte, Fresenius is going to share a lot of their cost economic data, which is huge. Otherwise, Humacyte would have to put that data together themselves, which would take them years and cost millions of dollars.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a huge, the Fresenius partnership is absolutely brilliant. We've spoken to the Fresenius guys. They're really awesome people.
They own equity in the company, correct?
They have a 19% stake in the company, which is a number that they wish to, that's the highest number they can go to without making this into a subsidiary accounting rather. So 19% is the level that they wish to stay at pre-deal and post-deal. I think they'll be a little bit shy of 19%. So they may have to take actions to address that at some point. But yeah, Fresenius has been a terrific partner.
So last question for Laura. Bob Langer or Robert Langer, a very, very well-known MIT professor and entrepreneur. I mean, like Dale said earlier, I mean, he really does have the golden touch when it comes to biotech. I believe he's founded or been a part of starting at least 40 biotech companies, including Moderna. He's worth probably at least $3 or $4 billion at this point, and continues to stay very active in the biotech community. And he is on your board of directors, correct?
Yeah, he is. So I worked in Langer's lab in the mid-late 90s, and it's actually there that I initially developed the first prototypes of the engineered blood vessels. I then took that to Duke, and then we spun the company out in North Carolina. So Bob has been part of this technology literally from the inception, and he's been on our board for quite a while, and he remains a terrific advisor.
I mean, if you're looking to start a biotech company, there probably is no better endorser or person to have involved than Bob. So that by itself lends a lot of credibility to what you guys are doing. Well, let's end it there unless anyone has any final comments they'd like to throw in.
No, I think it's been great talking to you. And, again, we're always excited to tell the Humacyte story. We do believe this is a transformational platform. This is not one shot on goal. We're going to continue to develop products and bring them to the marketplace for many years to come.
It's exciting. I wish you guys all the very best. I really appreciate your time today, and I look forward to staying in touch with all of you.
Thanks so much, Jonah.
Thank you.
Guys. Have a good one.
Bye.